Ever scroll through Instagram, and see those picture-perfect bodies and kind of think, ugh, maybe I need to hit the gym?
Yeah, that's pretty much a universal experience, right? That little voice of self-doubt creeping in.
Totally. Well, there was this interesting study, some researchers over in Spain. They wanted to find out what actually goes down with our self-esteem, like after just a few minutes of looking at all those idealized images,
Yeah, those perfect bodies.
exactly. And the thing is, this wasn't just a survey or something. It was a real experiment they did, which I think makes the findings even cooler.
Oh, for sure. They actually had people, divided them into two groups, and one group they were looking at images of, well, basically what we might call traditionally attractive bodies, fit, toned, that sort of thing.
Okay, so like a visual buffet of fitness goals. Got it.
Right, exactly. Plus, they also had them looking at these Instagram profiles of Esther Exposito and Rodrigo Garau. They're super popular celebrities.
Oh, yeah, I've seen them. So a healthy dose of life goals on top of everything else. Okay, so that's one group. What about the other group? What were they looking at? Filthy bunnies and rainbows?
Well, not quite, but it is kind of funny when you think about it. They saw pictures of the exact same clothing from the first group. But here's the catch: no models at all. And instead of those celebrity profiles, all plants and animals. Imagine like scrolling through your feed and it's all succulents and like puppies.
That's hilarious.
Oh,
Talk about a
what?
digital detox. Okay, so they measured a few things after all this, right?
They did. They were super interested in these three main things. One, self-esteem, obviously. Then how satisfied people were with their bodies. And finally, how much they felt pressured, like they had to be thinner.
All the good stuff, huh? Body image central. So what'd they find? Give us the juicy details.
Well, in the short term, the thing that really stuck out, like the biggest difference they saw, was in self-esteem.
Interesting. So even a quick peek at those, like, idealized images can have a measurable effect. Huh. What about body dissatisfaction and, that whole drive for thinness? Anything shifting there?
So they didn't see that same, I guess you could say, significant difference in those areas. And this is what I think is really interesting, the results did trend in that direction.
Oh, that is interesting. Okay, so maybe not a huge immediate shift, but those images might still be like subtly messing with those feelings.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. And you have to keep in mind, this was a short-term study, right? So it makes you wonder what happens with like the kind of constant daily exposure to this stuff that so many people have. I mean, it's everywhere.
Right. It's like, is social media slowly chipping away at our self-esteem without us even realizing it? That's kind of scary.
It really is. And get this, the researchers actually found that this dip in self-esteem, it wasn't a direct result of the images themselves.
Wait, really? What was it then? If it wasn't the pictures, what was doing it?
It was anxiety. Those images, they seem to be triggering anxiety in people.
Hold on. Anxiety. Okay, I need you to break that down for me. How are those two things connected? Images and, like, feeling anxious.
Okay, so picture this. You're scrolling, right? You see those perfect bodies, those perfect lives, whatever it is. And your brain, it might go into overdrive, right? Like instantly comparing yourself to what you're seeing. And that comparison, that's what can lead to feeling inadequate, which then, boom, triggers anxiety.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just about, like, wanting to look like the people in those images. It's the anxiety of feeling less than that. It gets triggered. That's a whole other level.
Exactly. And that is the crucial thing to take away from this. This study, it's like a big flashing sign about our emotional responses, especially anxiety, and how powerful they are, maybe even more than we realize, when it comes to shaping how we see ourselves.
And the crazy thing is, we were just talking about, like, a super short exposure to those images, a couple minutes, tops, right? But in real life, most of us, we're scrolling for way longer than that, multiple times a day even.
Oh, absolutely. It's like nonstop. And that's what makes this whole thing so, I don't know, kind of unsettling. Because even if each individual time you see one of those images, right, even if the effect is small in that moment, it's like, well, imagine, like, tiny little hits to your self-esteem, one after the other, all day long. And they're all fueled by anxiety. On top of it all, adds up, right?
Man, it's like death by 1,000 perfectly filtered selfies. Kind of depressing when you think about it.
Seriously. And this is just scratching the surface, right? Because this study, they were only looking at the short-term effects. So we really need more research to, like, really get a handle on what this constant barrage of, like, ideal everything is doing to us long-term, and the anxiety that comes with it, of course.
Totally. Okay, so we've got those classic, attractive, fit bodies. Those are one thing we talked about, one potential trigger for this whole anxiety, self-esteem spiral. But I mean, come on, let's be real. It's not just about bodies, is it? There's like a million other things they're showing us.
You're telling me you're absolutely right. It's like perfect homes, perfect vacations, perfect families, the whole 9 yards. And I bet you each one of those categories, it comes with its own special brand of social comparison and, yeah, probably a good dose of anxiety to go with it.
It's true. It is so easy to fall into that trap, thinking everyone else's life is like 10 times more glamorous and exciting and just
Yeah.
better, you know? Why does everyone else have their act together except me?
I know, right? And you know the worst part, it's like built into the system.
Yeah.
Because social media, it's all like highlight reel, right? Most people, they're only sharing the good stuff, the polished, perfect version of themselves and their lives. They're not showing you the behind the scenes, the mess ups, the struggles, all that.
Right. It's easy to forget that everybody's human. You know, everyone's dealing with their own stuff. No one's life is actually perfect, no matter what their feed looks like.
No kidding. And the thing is, even though we know that, intellectually at least, it's still hard to escape those algorithms, The ones those social media companies are using. It makes you wonder, like, are they actually making this whole self-esteem thing worse? I mean, they're in control of what we see.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, they decide, and then we just see it and react. But we don't have much of a choice.
Exactly. Because here's the thing, those algorithms, their whole purpose, their entire reason for existing is to keep us glued to the screen, right?
Yeah.
Keep us engaged. And what's more captivating than a little FOMO, a little fear of missing out?
Ugh. Don't even get me started on FOMO. The ultimate motivator. Am I right?
Tell me about it. And what's FOMO based on?
Social comparison, right? It's like these algorithms, they're constantly watching us, analyzing our every move, tweaking our feeds to show us exactly what they think we want to see more of. And if we react to something that makes us feel, inadequate, anxious, whatever, if we click on it or like it or comment on it, well, the algorithm, it sees that as engagement. So it's like, okay, this is working. Let's give them more of this.
So we're basically being played, is what you're saying. These platforms, they're like tapping into our deepest insecurities or anxieties just to keep us scrolling and watching and clicking.
It's kind of messed up when you think about it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's complicated, right? It's not always that straightforward. But being aware of what's going on behind the scenes, understanding the forces at play, that's like half the battle. Because these social media companies, they want our attention. That's the name of the game. And if they can get it by tapping into our insecurities, well, a lot of them are willing to do just that. Okay, so this is all pretty doom and gloom. What can we do about it? Like, practically speaking, how do we protect ourselves from all those self-esteem gremlins lurking in our feeds? Because it feels like we're like swimming upstream here.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's like, how do we fight back against that current? It feels impossible sometimes.
Well, I don't think it's about like swearing off social media completely, like deleting all your accounts and going off the grid. It's more about like being smarter about how we use it, more mindful,
Okay, that makes sense, but easier said than done, right? At least that's how it feels to me.
Oh, for sure. It definitely takes effort. But even small changes, they can actually make a big difference. And sometimes it just starts with like noticing what triggers those negative emotions for you. Are there certain accounts or like certain types of posts that consistently leave you feeling kind of crappy?
Oh, totally. I know exactly what you mean.
Right. And once you've figured out what your triggers are, then you can start being more intentional, like more deliberate about what you're letting into your feed. It's like you're in control of the guest list.
So it's like curating a more positive experience for yourself, like hitting that unfollow button on anything that bums you out or makes you feel bad about yourself.
Exactly. Fill your feed with things that spark joy, stuff that inspires you, makes you laugh, teaches you something new, not the stuff that just feeds your anxiety and self-doubt. Choose to focus on the good, both out there in the world and like within yourself. Because there's a lot of good stuff out there if you know where to look.
I love that. And you know what? So much of it really does come back to how we see ourselves, doesn't it? Like our own self-image.
100%. And remember those like seemingly perfect lives we were talking about? The ones that are always popping up in our feeds. It's so easy to forget, but those are just snippets, Carefully chosen, perfectly edited, moments in time. We're seeing the highlight reel, not the whole movie.
Oh, it's so true. And everyone has a highlight reel.
Exactly. And sometimes I think the best thing we can do when we start feeling that like social media overload, that feeling, it's to just like step away from it for a bit, put down the phone, close the laptop, and like reconnect with the real world. Spend time with people you care about, do things you love, the things that make you feel alive, because that's how you remind yourself of all the amazing things you bring to the table. Social media, it can't take that away from you.
Yes. Find that validation from within, not from Like the number of likes on a post.
Yes, a million times, yes. Because true self-esteem, it doesn't come from what other people think. It comes from knowing your own worth deep down. And that's something no one can take away from you.
Man, this has been, I don't know, eye-opening.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about social media, and not always in a good way.
It's true. It's definitely a double-edged sword, but I think
Yeah.
the key is awareness, right? Like once we understand the potential it has, to influence our self-esteem and we start being more mindful about how we use it, then, and I really believe this, we can actually harness its power for good.
I love that.
Oh.
All right, so to everyone listening, if you're feeling that familiar pang of like social media comparison right now, just remember, you are enough just as you are. Don't let those perfectly curated squares on a screen steal your joy, There's so much more to life than that.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll leave you with this. What if, instead of trying to fit in with the online crowd, you focused on becoming the best, truest, most authentic version of yourself? Something to think about.